Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at a leak list which has come out. This one has come out at a weird time and also is probably fake. And at the same time, it has a bunch of really cool vehicles on it, which is why we're going to have a look at it and see what at least people think may be coming in the next update. Overall, the actual list is actually pretty good, but whether it's going to come in or not is highly dubious, I think is probably the way to put it. So let's go through the vehicles, and even if they don't come out next update, I'm sure we'll see a lot of them in the future, and a lot of them look really cool. The first vehicle is a variant of the F-14, specifically the F-14D, the Super Tomcat. This was pretty much the final variant of the F-14. There's a few upgrades that were made to it, but mainly it is the last that is known. It was first delivered in 1991, and imagine taking all of the internal systems and just massively improving them. First of all, the vehicle used the F-110G 400 engines and also had a new radar, the ANAPG 71, and a bunch of other new internal systems for the vehicle itself, including infrared search and also track, which would be pretty cool. The vehicle also had access to a glass cockpit and many other features, but mainly it would just make the radar and also engines a lot better in game right now. Then we have a variant of the M19. This one is the T-22. Basically, on the 1st of February 1945, OCM 26544 recommended the development of a self-propelled mount for the 75mm gun T-22. This weapon was intended for use as an anti-aircraft gun at short to medium ranges using the new radio proximity fuse. At that time, the 75mm projectile was the smallest that could be fitted with such a fuse. The 75mm gun T-22 was installed on the mount T-18 with a recoil-operated loader rammer. Using this arrangement, the gun was designed to fire automatically at a rate of 40 to 45 rounds per minute. The chassis of the twin 40mm gun carriage, the M19, was selected for the installation of the T-22 gun and the T-18 mount. The mount for the dual 40mm gun was removed, and an adapter ring was used to install the T-18 mount. Tests at Aberdeen Proving Ground ran from February 1946 to June of 48. Problems with the loader rammer made it extremely difficult to obtain automatic fire, and then only when the gun was in a horizontal position. This may have been fortunate, since it was determined that the natural frequency of the vehicle's suspension was approximately the same as the firing rate of the automatic cannon. Needless to say, this would have resulted in destructive vibration during automatic fire. Further tests with the M19 chassis were discontinued, but the experience was useful during the development of the post-war Skysweeper anti-aircraft gun. So basically, what you're having is on the M19 chassis, a 75mm gun with access to HEVT shells. The LAV-25 also makes it in, the light armored vehicle. This is an American vehicle, which is mainly used by the Marines, which has a lot of variants which are built off of it. The LAV-25 specifically, though, is called this because it has a main armament of the M242 Bushmaster, the 25mm chain gun. It also has access to some 7.62s, and to motor around this 8-wheeled vehicle, it has access to a Detroit diesel 300 horsepower engine. The vehicle can actually go pretty quick at 100 kilometers an hour. We also have a bunch of other, well, at least one other LAV in the game already, the good old Leopard. So maybe the LAV-25 comes in and has a bit of fun. There is a ton of variants of this. Like the LAV is one of those chassis, just like stuff like the Patcher and things like that, which is designed to put separate turrets on it, and I'm sure we'll see many of them in the future. We also have the USS Charles F Adams. Now, one of the interesting things about these leak lists is they keep throwing in these missile destroyers. None of them have actually come to the game yet, but this one, at least, is about. Last time we had a look at the Forrest Sherman set of class destroyers. This time we have the Charles F Adams, which is right here. This vehicle is a destroyer that was built in the 50s, or I should say the late 50s, and it served all the way into the 90s. The vehicle itself had an armament of two 5-inch guns. It also had a ASROC launcher, some torpedo tubes on it too, and the main thing is also the Mark 11 missile launcher. So it had access to the RIM-24 Tartar SAM or the RIM-66 later on. And then, of course, since this vehicle was used for so long, the good old Harpoon, which has just been added to War Thunder Mobile for a submarine. This vehicle took part in a bunch of different things during the Cold War. First of all, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and also some operations in the Indian Sea. But one of the coolest things, at least in my opinion, is it participated in the recovery of the Mercury 8 space mission, which is really cool. For Germany, we start off with the F4F Ice, which has been leaked about 5 times in the last 5 updates. This one is just one which will eventually come, and the biggest difference between the standard F4 Phantom and the Ice upgrade, which is the improved combat efficiency, at least in terms of the game, is the AIM-120 AMRAAM edition. Now, the fact is, Fox 3 missiles are coming to the game next update, so maybe that's what we'll see. Basically, when it came to Stage 2 of the Ice program to improve the Phantom, they added the Honeywell H423 Laser INS, the GEC CPU 143A Central Air Data Computer, the military standard 1553R Digital Data Bus, and also the ANALAR 68 V2 Radar Warning Receiver. And then the big addition, which was the Weapon Systems upgrade, which everybody focuses on at Stage 3, is the huge DASA ANAPG 65Y Multimode Radar, the Light Earth Digital Fire Control System, and also the Fraser-Nash launch system for the AIM-120, which was fitted in the Sparrow slots for the vehicle. So basically, in terms of the game, it's getting a very, very powerful radar and RWR, and also access to active radar homing missiles. Also for Germany, we have an Italian vehicle. I might be wrong about this one, but basically it's the Linkx, or the Linkx as you may know it. It's a little Italian scout car, and it was used by the Italians, but also used by the Germans. This thing is a 4-wheeled little vehicle. It has access to a tiny engine, an 82 horsepower one, and has no armor, and an 8mm Breda 38. I don't know if the Germans upgunned it at all, but yeah, this thing would be a bit odd to add. I've got a feeling that the H variant, which this one is some kind of weird upgrade with like a short-barreled 50 or a 37 on it, because, yeah, it literally has an 8mm Breda machine gun. For Germany, you also have the Panzerwagen M36. This one's all over the place. Basically, it's a Dutch vehicle, which was the designation of a Swedish vehicle, which is the Lanser L180, which was based off of the German Daimler-Benz chassis. So Sweden took a Daimler-Benz chassis, built a vehicle on top of it, and then the Dutch bought them and used them. They had a few of them. I believe they had something like 12 or maybe 20 of these vehicles, and they were forced into action against the German army as they invaded. The Germans won, but the Germans decided to put them into their own service, using the 20mm Madsen cannon, which they had, but a lot of the actual vehicles themselves were retrofitted with 37mm Bofors anti-tank guns, which is kind of cool. They also had a Lewis machine gun, which is kind of nice. So yeah, these ones are very similar to the BA series from the Soviets, but obviously of Swedish descent, used by the Dutch, captured by the Germans, and used again. You also have the SPZ BMP-2. This is just a GDR BMP-2. The Germans, or the East Germans, did use the BMP-2, so it would be no different from the standard one we have in the Soviet tech tree. Also, the Leopard 2A4M turns up again for Canada, this time as a pack premium. This is a upgraded Leopard 2A4. Basically, Canada was in Afghanistan. They got into a bunch of military conflicts and were like, you know what, we probably want to upgrade the vehicles that we bought from the Dutch, which were their Leopard 2A4s, and they wanted to specifically make them more designed for good old fighting in Afghanistan. So they wanted to upgrade them. They decided to add some armor to them, a little bit of slat armor, and also a little bit of applique armor around the place, and also some internal additions too, such as an all-electrical digital turret, a digital central logic and main distribution system, and also a new commander system control unit, some better brakes, and also a little bit better stuff for the driver. So it's basically a 2A4 which has more additional armor to it, and also there was talk of actually upgrading the gun to the L55, but they never actually did, so it's still stuck with the L44. You also have a Sukhoi turn-up, the Su-33. This is a carrier-based air superiority fighter. So this vehicle was developed off of the Su-27, and the vehicle, at least known in the West as the Flanker D, which is pretty fun. The vehicle has been around for quite a long time, but they haven't really made a lot of them, or at least as people know. There was only 18 Su-33s in service in 2022 with the Russian Navy, and yeah, it's about 40 years old at this point. The vehicle itself uses the Saturn AL31F3 afterburning turbofan engines, which of course develop a lot of thrust. It can go over Mach 2, has access to the standard 30mm, and also can carry pretty much everything that you'd be used to. The R-27s, the R-73s, and of course other multi-role munitions too, such as anti-ship missiles, since it is a carrier-based aircraft, and also stuff like bombs in the form of cluster bombs. The vehicle itself also has a pretty powerful radar, which it runs around with, an all-weather radar which can be used in any situation. There's also a Lanser L180 for the USSR, which I'm very surprised by. Basically, you know how we talked about the Panzerwagen M36? Well, that's a Lanser L181. The 180 is kind of another version of it, and it could either have the 37mm Bofors, or it could have the Madsen on it, which is very similar to the other one. Now, the interesting thing about the 180 is it was used by a ton of different nations. Had access to the Bussing NAG LAV V8 cylinder petrol with 180 horsepower. It could go pretty nippy for the time it was built, which was the early 1930s. It was a six-wheeled vehicle wandering around. But yeah, this vehicle was used by a lot of different nations. Basically, the one that it says that it is the Estonian one, which makes no sense, since it was used by the police force and they only used one of them. It would actually make more sense if they just went with the Soviet Union one, which had a Mercedes-Benz 65 horsepower engine in it, and also used an Oerlikon 20mm, which is kind of cool. So, don't know why they picked the Estonian one of all things, but yeah, they could just pick the one that the Russians captured from the Lithuanians. We also have the Object 277, which is part of that group of the last era of heavy tank, I suppose, for the Soviet Union. Stuff like the 279, the 278, and of course the 770. The 277 was designed in 1957, it was fully built, and it was a pretty standard heavy tank design. The hull itself was based off the T10M, but it was elongated and also more curved, and it had access to a 130mm M65 cannon, which of course is very similar to a lot of the other heavy tanks. The gun itself was stabilized by the Groza system, and also it had access to APDS, which is very interesting for the vehicle itself. It used the M850 diesel engine, which was an upgraded version of the B2 diesel engine, which meant that it had over 1,000 horsepower. The vehicle itself weighed quite a lot, and it was pretty heavy, but since it was a Soviet machine, they put all the beefy engine in it, and it was able to motor at 55 kilometers an hour. It also had quite a lot of armor past it as well, but at the time it was built, they technically built two of them, one of the variants being the 278, but the main reason why this thing never went anywhere and why there was only one built is because, first of all, the shifter MBTs with stuff like the T64 and so on, but also the fact that people just developed weapons to absolutely nuke these things, such as ATGMs and also other guided munitions. So the heavy tank became not so heavy anymore. I'd just like to thank Tullio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pieman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Alan Hacker, Ozzy Panzer, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Cam Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.